Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Everag Global Insights, and we're back this week, Steve, with a bit of a trade update and, of course, a bit of the futures lead into this week's GDT, which was an interesting one, and chart of the week.
Okay.
Let's head into it. So we've got some export data out of the EU up to February. Overall, EU trade has stayed slightly ahead in the milk solids equivalent basis, but some interesting trends there. Obviously, infant milk formula well down, and that reflects the Chinese situation. Skim milk powder also down. Availability issue, you would think, Steve, and fat's also down, but cheese up.
Joe, fats has probably got the same issue with availability. It's slowing. You see there, it was stronger earlier, but come off. Cheese is pretty good. I mean, it's steady. It's holding on to good 5%-ish year-on-year gains.
And whole milk powder up. Obviously not massive volumes there, Steve, but yeah, fairly steady over the last few months for Europe.
Joe, you've got a bit of an add up here of global trade.
Yeah, we've done a bit of a sneak peek of global trade. We'll probably have more detail for you next week, but just in terms of milk solids equivalent, we're just seeing that little worm turn up slightly on this latest data for these major exporters. And really that's reflecting a bit more whole milk powder action, a bit more AMF. That will mostly be out of New Zealand, of course. Cheese has done pretty well, and again, infant milk formula well down with that Chinese effect. So the clear out really continues, doesn't it, Steve?
Yeah, and then when we look at, Joe, what the comparatives are, I mean, you put a nice little smiley face on this.
Yeah, it looks a bit Amazonish there, but yeah, 60% year-on-year growth in whole milk powder, but that is, as you say, Steve, on a fairly ordinary comparative in February 2023. So interesting.
Yeah, you can see fats is also pretty poor this time last year. That's also well up. And cheese had a couple of good months.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess also, Steve, that whole milk powder trade reflects a little bit on the O'Neill tender, which we'll see in the next slide with some regional breakdowns of that milk solids equivalent trade. And really, MENA is the big mover there, Steve.
Yeah, and I think breaking that down, Joe, it's both Middle East and North Africa, not just about the tenders, but, Middle East is hoovering up quite a lot of powder at attractive prices. It's also that advantage of whole milk on, the fat and protein basis that is still a discount to skim and butter, which is supporting the growth in trade there.
Yeah, and I think a bit earlier we did see that fat-filled powders and mixtures are a little bit down. So that all kind of lines up, doesn't it, Steve?
Yeah, Joe, I think we're going to have a bit of a nerd out on this next week. Full details because we'll have the full add up as we publish our Trade Insights newsletter. Yeah, stay tuned for more.
Wow.
So the futures lead into this event look generally pretty positive. Butterfat in Europe has stayed firm. I mean, there's still, the spot reports of trades are still encouraging that the market's holding together at elevated prices, but flattening out the curve.
Yes. So a bit more positive in the short term, but not so much in the further term there, Steve.
This is most encouraging for the US market that the futures has rallied the last few days, back up by the time we get to May, back up near, just under 4,000. That will fill a lot of people with a bit of relief, I think, given how low it's been. You see the comparison in the last couple of weeks, it's moved quite a bit. And skim milk powder, Joe, this optimism about the Oceania value, that's, pretty strong contango there in forward prices. The event has set that adrift, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. So the other bit of news for GDT, Steve, was around these volumes.
Yeah, so a little bit of an increase announced last week in offer volumes through spring. So in the case of skim milk powder on the right, that's really shifted out of the back half and into the front. So overall, not much change. Whole milk powder, though, there are additional volumes placed on. So 89% up both powders August to the end of the year. That tonnage, though, the increase in the whole milk powder, pretty much equates to the additional surprise milk increase they've had late season. So it's being explained as a seasonal correction that more in the shape of milk production. I think it's more in the shape of the milk that wasn't expected to arrive is now sitting in bags, dried into whole milk powder in bags. So that's probably what's behind this.
So cleaning out that end of season stock, Steve.
All right, event 354 was quite mixed. Look, so if we can just look across there, powders sprinkled either side of the zero line. AMF flowed well, butter melted a bit, and cheese crumbled.
Oh. Cheese was not so great despite the firmer US market since the start of the week.
It's good, Joe. Well done. You managed to bring in those cheese analogies. It really is a chart that sags towards the right, but we see, like we've seen in some of the futures, shorter term prices stronger and weaken to flatten out some curves.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, spot markets.
Yeah, look, the spot prices comparison, again, we're seeing the US is very much the cheapest source of cheese. But for all the other categories there, they're lining up pretty well, Steve. So, just as the New Zealand season comes to an end, Europe gearing up a bit, it's all kind of lining up fairly evenly.
So demand was certainly wasn't like the last event. Volume's pretty similar to the last outing, but we've seen here, you can see skim milk powder demand down, whole milk stayed up. Both fats also good. That's also on reduced volumes, and we covered that story last time. So demand is expected to be stronger in that case. On steady offer volumes, China disappointed here. Yeah. That's an emotive term, but it was lower than last time. And when you look at skim milk powder, that's the weakest in almost a year. That overstocking in skim still plagues demand in this market.
Yeah, Southeast Asian demand a little better, at least for whole milk powder, Steve. So we've seen in general trades been quite strong for whole milk powder into Southeast Asia. So that's consistent here, but it's kind of 10% up in the last 12 months. Are they full and they actually don't need to turn up anymore? Yeah. So it's down year on year, isn't it?
It is. That's a good question, Joe. I mean, it's the most likely situation. It's are they done or done for a while? And it's a long way back in skim milk powder. I mean, while that looks like a lift, we've looked at the general trade and we'll talk about that again next week, but we're still a long way back. It is encouraging. It is improving a little, but
still below that trend line, Steve.
Yeah. Well and truly. Joe, and fats.
Yeah, we always like to have a little look at, AMF continues its positive run. Is this the 16th event without a reduction in the price? We've still got this discount to butter. It's a little bit smaller as we go along, but still very much there. So if you're after fat, it's still, I guess, a value buy.
So that forward price line thing, I think the interesting thing here is what's the response going to be in other markets to what is now a much flatter forward curve. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Joe, chart of the week, what have you come up with?
Well, chart of the week, we're in the US and we've got some data about commercial disappearance of cheese, which is very interesting given what's happening with cheese prices and milk balance and all that sort of stuff. So this is a rolling 6-month average. It's down 1.3% in that 6-month period. And you can just see with those monthly bars of percentage changes, it is getting worse. So it was down 7.3% in February on American cheese. Overall cheese is down 3.5% for February, but on that rolling 6-month basis, it's down 0.6%. So not quite as down as for American cheese, Steve, but it's obviously one to watch given the importance of cheese demand in the US for world markets.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's a great wrap, Joe. That's all from us. We'll be back again this week with much more.